Hello friends, I'm D.M. Murdoch, also known as Acharya S., author of The Christ Conspiracy, Sons of God, and Who Was Jesus? My work was one of the sources for the internet movie Zeitgeist, which has gone viral online with at least 15 million views so far, not only in English, but in several other languages as well. First of all, let me clarify that I was not involved in the creation of Zeitgeist, other than providing a few images and consulting on Part 1 at the last minute, resulting in the final official version, and it is only this version I will be addressing here. Over the past several months, there have been many claims on websites and in forums and videos all over the internet that the first part of Zeitgeist has been refuted or debunked. Contrary to these claims, the facts continue to demonstrate otherwise. Because of my work's influence on Part 1 of Zeitgeist, a number of the debunking sites have been directed largely at me. While we would naturally expect a debate as to the facts, the detractors, whether theists or atheists, quite often have not actually studied my work, and there has not been one refutation site to our knowledge that has proceeded from an informed and unbiased perspective, accurately presenting facts based on serious research. It should be kept in mind that in this short video, I can't cover everything, but I have already written extensively on these subjects, and I have specifically addressed several important issues from Zeitgeist in my companion guide to Part 1, available online right now. Why is the information in Zeitgeist Part 1 not widely known? In the first place, because of blasphemy and heresy laws, in the not-too-distant past, people could lose their jobs, friends, families, or even lives for merely questioning Christian dogma, which caused many people to remain silent on these issues. Also, much of this information can't be found in English, but it appears in other languages, like Greek, Latin, German, French, Sanskrit, Hebrew, and Egyptian. Unless someone can work in other languages, he or she may never encounter these facts. Because of these situations and others, including deliberate censorship by vested interests, many of these parallels between Christ and other gods and goddesses of the ancient world cannot be found in encyclopedia entries, and these seem to be where most of the debunkers are getting their information from, as well as from Christian apologists, whose biases are obvious and well known. In other words, you won't easily find this information in encyclopedias. The subject requires much deeper research than that, and reading encyclopedia entries does not make an expert out of anyone. In addition, these days many scholars are so specialized they don't cover the broad array of subjects involved in this particular field of research. Scholars in past eras were less specialized, and they did in fact make these connections within comparative religion, as my research demonstrates. Furthermore, some of these parallels between Jesus and the other gods represent mysteries in the ancient world that were not to be divulged to the masses. In fact, people were killed for revealing these secrets, such that these mysteries were not readily recorded. Nevertheless, with painstaking research and piecing together, we can present a solid case for all of the important parallels. In my investigation of the Horus-Jesus parallels for my companion guide, I incorporate many pre-Christian primary sources, as well as the works of scholars highly credentialed in the appropriate fields. The other correspondences found in Zeitgeist can likewise be backed up with either primary sources or the works of highly credentialed scholars. For example, the parallels between Christ and the god Attis, who was brought up in Zeitgeist, are discussed by Dr. Andrew T. Fear, a professor of classics and ancient history at the University of Manchester in England. In his article, Sybil and Christ, Dr. Fear tells us that Attis was killed and then raised from the dead 3 days later, during a celebration that depicted him being resurrected out of a tomb, basically at Easter time, precisely as was said of Christ. Also, the idea of the Indian god Krishna's mother being a virgin is not widely known and is therefore said to be wrong. First of all, the virgin birth motif is specifically stated by ancient writers like Philo of Alexandria to be a mystery, as was the goddess who gave birth to a god and yet remained an eternal virgin. And this fact of secrecy explains why these themes are not found all over the place in writing. I have written extensively about Krishna's mother in Sons of God and elsewhere. In my books, The Christ Conspiracy and Sons of God, I also discuss in detail the gods Dionysus and Mithra, who were likewise brought up in Zeitgeist Part 1. Concerning other themes in Zeitgeist, there are many good books on the subject of Old Testament myths, and my book, Who Was Jesus?, goes into greater detail regarding the Joseph-Jesus parallels, as well as the lack of evidence for the historical Jesus. We should keep in mind that shouts for primary sources serve to remind us that Christians went on a rampage to censor and obliterate everything outside of their faith. In fact, these censors destroyed a huge amount of the type of evidence that we're discussing here. One straw man argument raised by debunkers concerns the December 25th birth date of various gods, which apologists dismiss by claiming Jesus wasn't really born at that time. However, since the 4th century, when this winter solstice celebration was designated as Christ's birthday, hundreds of millions of people have been taught that December 25th is the date of Christ's birth, and hundreds of millions continue to celebrate that date every year. Indeed, Christian preachers today still insist that Jesus Christ is the, quote, reason for the season, unquote. Furthermore, in 2007, the United States House of Representatives passed House Resolution 847, officially declaring December 25th to be the birthday of Jesus Christ. Raising up this issue of the birthday of the Son, S-U-N, is therefore entirely legitimate. But this assertion that Jesus was not born on December 25th merely proves our point that he is not the reason for the season. Another fallacy concerns the three kings comparison, which is dismissed by apologists because nowhere in the New Testament does it mention a number for the wise men who brought gifts to the Christ child. While it is true that the wise men, magi, or kings are not numbered in the New Testament, their gifts are numbered as 3 at Matthew 2:11, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Also, Christian tradition follows Matthew's suit by numbering the wise men as well, which is why we have a famous Christmas song called We Three Kings. Christian tradition also calls the 3 king stars in the constellation of Orion the Magi. Much more about all these subjects can be found in my books. A word about the calumny and libel often included in these debunking videos. It shouldn't be necessary for me to address such silliness, but I can assure you that I am not a Freemason, Illuminati, CIA agent, or Mossad agent. Nor do I belong to any satanic or occult organization of any kind. Those making such claims are not only guilty of libel, but are also breaking one of the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. This type of vitriol has been tossed around by Christians since day one, and it is quite tiresome. And speaking of wearisome speech, the point raised by Zeitgeist about the Book of Revelation and the end times is important for the reason that this constant talk by Christian evangelicals may actually bring about Armageddon by setting up Christians to do battle, and I firmly believe we must not let that happen. For this reason, we cannot afford to allow these matters to reside in the realm of unproven faith and blind belief. There is much more to this story, obviously, than meets the eye or than can be covered in a short video. Again, interested parties may examine the volumes on the subject produced by me or others, especially my ebook, The Companion Guide to Zeitgeist Part 1. The same type of information for the rest of the Horus-Jesus parallels in Zeitgeist can be found in my latest book, Christ in Egypt, The Horus-Jesus Connection, which covers these subjects in the same scholarly manner using primary sources and credentialed authorities. Many of us are delighted by the amazing success of Zeitgeist for the major reason that it has generated tremendous interest in what I consider to be some of the most intriguing subjects on the planet: comparative religion, mythology, and astrotheology. These subjects have unfortunately been swept under the carpet for far too long in favor of biased, ethnocentric fallacies, reducing the grandeur of the cosmos to petty fishtails. We are hopeful that this massive interest in these fascinating subjects will continue to increase. Thank you.